So for my project, I wrote a program in Python, a computer programming language, high-level language, that basically you feed it some kinds of texts, and it generates a poem based on those texts using these things called Markov chains, which is basically like looking at looking at the things that came previously in a sequence to determine what the next thing in a sequence is going to be. So like if, I don't know, I can't give a good example off the top of my head, but basically it generates like, it's like your autocomplete on your cell phone basically, right? So like if you type a word in, it suggests like other words that you can hit, and that's using Markov chains, I think, most likely. That's how I would write it, at least. So it's basically like looking at what else you've written in the past and then suggesting like what is the most probable thing for the most probable next word that's going to come after that. So anyway, I wrote a program that generates poems using Markov chains based on other texts. So then I came up with the problem of what is the text that I'm going to feed this thing to make poems off of, right? So I picked King Lear as my Shakespeare text that I wanted to remediate, mostly because I like King Lear a lot. I'm not a Shakespearean, I'm a Victorianist originally, and King Lear is one of the only Shakespeare plays I've read several times before here, and I like King Lear a lot. It's one of my favorite pieces of literature. So I decided to do it on King Lear, mostly because of that, but also because King Lear is just one of the most ubiquitous Shakespeare plays, basically. I mean, like, Hamlet is probably more well-known. It is more well-known. I actually did a Google Ngram search before class to see, like, what are the most discussed Shakespeare plays in the past, like, 2 centuries. And it was like Hamlet was above, and Othello was above, and Romeo and Juliet and King Lear were, like, equal, basically. Which actually kind of surprised me. I didn't think Othello was that popular. I don't know. I don't like Othello. But, yeah, so I made this thing remediate King Lear, but I didn't just train it on King Lear. I trained it on lots of things that are remediations of King Lear as well, or other mediations maybe not remediations. So I can pull up the list of things that I actually trained it on so that I can tell you. Probably should have gotten that out beforehand. But basically what it is like either texts that scholars have argued Shakespeare has used as sources of King Lear, or things that scholars have made arguments about King Lear influencing. So like Sense and Sensibility is one of the texts that I trained it on, because there was an argument made by some scholar whose name I don't remember, in a journal I don't remember, that made some, like a paragraph reference that because Sense and Sensibility was about daughters and inheritance, it was somehow related to Lear. And really this is like, as the project has been developing, I've actually been changing what I'm talking about a little bit. I'm gonna put that down. Today, actually, I added a few new texts. I added Nahum Tate's version of King Lear today, and I added the quarto version. The quarto version is the history of King Lear, and the folios are the tragedy of King Lear. So I added a couple more versions of King Lear to it today. And I've also been thinking about, like, I haven't added any more things, but I'm still in the process of thinking about other things that I could add that basically talk about other memes within King Lear, which is a word we've been trying to avoid, but I kind of like the idea of memes, of these like little discrete units of things that are reproduced, throughout text, basically. So yeah, that's what I did. I can show you, well, I can talk about, and they can put behind me, the interface of what this thing is. Over break, actually, I don't know if any of you saw it, I posted it on Compass, my second reflection or whatever. Basically, over break, I redesigned the user interface of it a little bit, so I tried to make it look more like a modern web app, kind of. The first version of it that I made, I used a black letter font, which, I mean, it was obviously a 21st century digital typeface, but it was a remediation of 16th century typefaces. But it was very difficult to read. So I changed it to being in Baskerville now, which is an 18th century font, or 17th century font, 18th century. I like Baskerville. Why are you making noise? It's a pretty font.
is in Baskerville.
That's why. Well, that's the reason I chose Baskerville, because Baskerville is really associated with print, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not used on the web a lot. It's used in print. It's used in books. And
Mine
it's
was
like,
in Baskerville. Mine's in
yeah. Well, Baskerville is like the most ubiquitous like print typeface, probably, or one of them at least.
It signifies print elegance.
Right. That's why I chose it. So this is something that signifies print and not like, it's not Helvetica or like Open Sans or some sans serif font. Comic Sans. Yeah. So I changed it to Baskerville. It's more readable. I added a button that you can click to get new ballads now, so that's cool. I also, there's information at the bottom of the page about, like, there's a link to find out more about Balladmonger, where I have like a small write-up talking about what I did. But I kind of grayed out those links too, so that they're like not the focus of the website, basically. So yeah.
And the pictures?
Oh yeah, I forgot about the pictures. I also include, well, you probably can't see it, but it'll be behind me.
Make sure you screenshot it.
Yeah, I'll take a screenshot right now. I did it. So I have these random images. I think there's like a dozen of them that I got them from this website called publicdomainvectors.org, which a vector is like a kind of image. So they're these just public domain images. They're all in black and white, and they look like woodcuts, kind of. That's why I chose them. And they all have this sort of look about them like they're from an earlier time period, but it's not really specific what it is. Well, I don't know, some of them might look 16th century-ish, I don't know, or 17th century. But they signify lots of different time periods, which I thought is really interesting. I mean, that's something Shakespeare does too. It's very hard to pin down like what time period this is, and that's something that I wanted the program to signify, is this time period that, it has these elements that are signifying that it's from the 21st century, especially just like the Markov chain generated text sounds like horsey books and like stuff like that. It sounds like something that comes from the 21st century. But then the woodcuts have this feel that they're from a different time, sort of, they're anachronistic in some way. And same with the header image, actually is a remediation of Laurie's handout on rare book anatomy, but it still like looks like it's from a different time, basically. Yeah. The other big thing that I wanted to talk about that I didn't is that, so my main purpose behind this is to destabilize like the idea of destabilize concepts of authority behind these sorts of memes, basically. So basically any meaning, well, first of all, who is the author of this thing, right? Like, I didn't write any of these poems. They're just generated randomly, kind of. And if you're gonna make any kind of meaning out of them, parse any kind of sense from them, it's the reader who's doing it. And then the reader has to decide, these things aren't stored anywhere on the server. They don't exist once you navigate away from the page. So if the reader wants to do something with them, it's the reader's responsibility to remediate them again somewhere else, to copy and paste it and print it or save it or post it on Facebook or something. The app itself doesn't do any of that. It leaves it up to the readers in more power, basically.
There was one that a gentleman did that he found a way that he had an algorithm that kind of randomized ballads, and I thought that was really cool. Is this is like some of them were coherent and you could actually follow along with the story, and the other ones were hilarious because they were absolute nonsense. And of course, like personally, I was kind of interested in like, well, like how it works and everything, and how one could go from like one word to the next and to make something that's not just like random articles, and then and it was really cool to see that.
And I thought that was a really cool way of like you know, because we have these like social analytical tools, you know, you have like Google can compile all this information, so we have like, you can type in one word and get a million things. So to do that with text and like, it's like this vast library that we don't have before, and now we can do that. So, and then to synthesize information from that is a very cool thing. I think it creates analysis in new forms and new senses. So I would like that a lot.
It takes the idea of the classic ballad into the software that's going to create that, and then he said it like disappears, you know, forever unless you like say something like that. That's kind of how, you know, ballads work. That kind is spoken down through word of mouth. A lot of these things, even as far back as Beowulf, were not, you know, really recorded as much as they were passed down in story, right? And I think the software that eliminates it right after, it doesn't like keep it in a cache of ballads saved or whatever, really reflects that, and I appreciate that. You kind of have like the old values still in the new age and software and stuff.
I don't know. For me, it kind of brought up the idea where, I don't know, there's this idea where if you have a monkey that's sitting on a typewriter, and if it types forever, I don't know what's called infinite monkey thing or whatever, and you know, if you just let it type in random characters, you eventually get Shakespeare. And the idea is that, I mean, when you could have something that you could just apply to prose, where eventually you get Shakespeare. And of course, this is something that, I mean, the computer has no idea that's actually doing this, or that, I mean, it's just spitting out something that it thinks looks like a sentence, it looks like a ballad, and yeah, it was just, in a way, it incorporates Shakespeare, or could, and in other ways, it could be something that's completely diverse. So, in that sense, I guess it's, I mean, you can't really tell.
It's a sweet merging of like technology and, you know, the more Englishly side of things, along with the poetry and whatnot. It's very interesting to see how something automated and in some ways completely objective can make something that we can analyze artistically.